Friday the 13th Part 2, for some reason, decides to spend the opening 7 minutes recapping the events of the first film via a dream from Alice, the only survivor from the group of campers from the first movie. It's bad enough that I had to sit down and watch the bland and boring Friday the 13th in the first place, let alone have it recapped for me. The summary includes Jason popping out of the lake in the end, which is a confusing mistake because of certain events later on. After she awakens in her apartment, she spends the next couple of minutes being scared by phone calls, cats and other stuff before being unceremoniously bumped off. We later come to find that her killer is the kid Jason who drowned in Camp Crystal Lake all those years ago. Now, pondering on just how Jason, who we'll find out to be quite a doofus later on, managed to track down Alice is one thing, but we must ask ourselves first, just why the hell is he not a decomposing sludge of flesh at the bottom of a lake? So did he not die all those years ago and faked his death? If so, why was his mother seeking revenge? Or did he die and then come back to life? But then why was he a kid in the final scene in Friday the 13th Part 1 and a grown man in this film? The only explanation really is that the jump scare sequence in the first movie was a dream sequence, but that still doesn't explain why this guy just started to prance around killing people. Unless of course it's a revenge for his mother's death. But wouldn't the two have met somewhere down the line and Mrs. Voorhees would see that her son wasn't dead? Then why was she seeking revenge in the first place? Unless he was hiding from her too and he didn't drown all those years ago and instead managed to escape the lake and piss off into the woods. I've spent too much brain power trying to decipher the absurdity of this movie. The truth is that the people who worked on the first film never intended for Jason to become a villain nor had any thoughts for a sequel. The guys who made this film decided to do just that and ran with the idea but never actually explained it in any of the sequels, I've been told. At least the Halloween movies had that Thorn cult thing and the Freddy Krueger films told us why a normal man was able to go into the dreams of children. Come on, Minor, that's just not on. If you can accept Jason's return, and judging by this franchise's box office returns, people did, then Friday the 13th 2 still does not make for compelling viewing. You see, everything that I've just talked about happens in the first 10 minutes or so in the movie, and the film itself is 1 hour 26 minutes long. That leaves just over an hour for the actual story to take place. And it's just the same story as the first film. A group of horny teenagers are camping near a lake for whatever reason. These lot are a bunch of trainee counsellors or something. They dick about for a while and have some dull conversations with each other, and every so often we're spared another agonising discussion about who bloody cares because anyone who goes for a piss alone is taken out by an unknown stalker. Then a female is chased for about 15 minutes and apparently kills her stalker and she lives happily ever after, but not before we're gifted with a cheap jump scare which apparently is a dream sequence. Wham, bam, I think I've been ripped off, man. That was the setup of both this film and the first one, and the world of the internet tells me that the sequels are no different. Oh joy. It wouldn't be so bad if there was actually some talent behind or in front of the camera. The actors are a bunch of charisma-free wooden planks, and the long, boring and overused pop shots of Jason doing a bit of the old window peeping feel like they go on forever. They're also accompanied endlessly with that irritating kill, kill, kill score being played on a loop. The director must have thought he was either expertly building up tension, spoiler alert, he wasn't, or needed to pad out the scenes in order to justify a theatrical worthy runtime. Not to mention the ultra slow motion used in scenes that are supposed to be frantic, but in doing so they kill any possible tension. When the film isn't boring you to sleep, it's ripping off better films like Mario Bava's A Bay of Blood, with 2 scenes for example, one where 2 people are impaled with a spear while they're banging away in bed, and another where a woman decides to get naked and swim in the middle of a creepy ass lake in the middle of the night in the cold for no reason. Why? There's no style, there's no draw, there's no signature that makes me think, yes, that is Friday the 13th and that's why I watch these movies. Neither of the first 2 films that I've seen so far have had the atmosphere of, say, Halloween or the class of A Bay of Blood, the grittiness of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, of the furious nature and inventiveness of A Nightmare on Elm Street. So what's the appeal? A few cheap jump scares and watching teenagers get killed one by one? Sorry, that's not for me. It's too bland, too formulaic. If you add a shot of whiskey every time a horror movie cliche is on the screen, you die of liver failure before the credits roll. There are a lot of scenes that are preposterous, like where the girl that goes on and on about how if Jason is alive then he must be scared and traumatized from missing his mum, etc, etc. But where's she getting all this from? She was only told the story of Jason from a small campfire speech from one of the other characters. The girl's monologue is only present to set up the scene where she impersonates Jason's mother in order to trick him. Another scene which is also implausible. There was no way she'd be able to deduce that that was the way to get to him, not from what she already knew about him at the time. The only redeeming parts are the climatic 10 minutes or so with the girls getting chased throughout the camp by Jason, even though it's not particularly scary, quite the opposite in fact. I couldn't get the Benny Hill theme out of my head as the two ran around the camp, but it's definitely the most entertaining part of the film. Jason getting kicked in the balls or falling off wooden chairs is better than the monotone conversations that the kids have throughout the rest of the film, and at least unlike the first film, the one who's doing the chasing isn't a middle-aged woman. See, I originally planned to watch the entire series as a week or so long marathon. I did the same with the likes of Halloween and A Nightmare on Elm Street. Seeing the bad films in a series is essential for you to truly be a fan of a franchise and to be part of it, in my opinion. That's why I don't think you can say you're a proper Star Wars fan until you've experienced the pain of the prequels, or The Force Awakens for that matter. And I do enjoy watching an entire series in a short space of time. However, there has to be some good films in there, at least in the franchise, to counter the bad. The Nightmare series had the original, Dream Warriors, and New Nightmare, for example. And there's always something positive to get, even from the bad movies. But if what I'm told about the Friday the 13th movies is correct, that the formula never changes and the first two films are actually the best, is there any point in me continuing, if what I've seen so far doesn't even impress me? I suppose the kills may be worth watching in the sequels, as they were my favourite parts of these two movies, so I may give the rest a go, though I can't say I'm eagerly anticipating the rest of the movies. Far from it. My rating of this one, 5 out of 10.